Hello, this is Mrs. White, and I'll be talking about geologic timescale. Now, what is a geologic timescale? So, a geologic timescale is all the Earth's geological history, represented on a chronological or in sequence time chart. As you can see here, I'll explain in a few minutes. Now, this is based on rock strata and fossil records, and they sequence the fossil records based on how old these rocks and fossils are. Now, this is scale, as you can see here on this chart. This is broken up into different time chunks. The largest being is the eon, then the era, then the period, and the epoch. Now, MY stands for millions of years, and this diagram is not into scale, but as you can see from bottom up, okay, the oldest time frame that we can see here is the Precambrian, and this is broken up into three, and then followed by the next eon, which is your Phanerozoic eon. Okay, and then there's era within the Phanerozoic, and then in each era there are different periods, and then the only epoch that we have is under the Cenozoic era, as you can see over here. And we'll discuss some of the highlights of our geologic history. Now, as you can see here on this wheel diagram, that much of the Earth's geologic history falls under Hadean, Archean, and Paleozoic. So it's over here, the pink, the kind of reddish one, the pink one, and the blue one. So most of the Earth's history falls under that, about 88%. And then the rest of it, it's pretty much like just a piece of the whole entire pie, as you have to say. Okay, and if this were actually a clock, okay, humans actually showed up at around 11:58 p.m. if we compare it to a clock, like I mentioned. And notice some of the important events which happened over 4.6 billion years. So that time frame from your Hadean all the way up to where humans are right now, this happened 4.6 billion years ago. Now, let's take a look at the Precambrian period. Now, when you say Precambrian period, this is divided into three parts: the Hadean, Archean, and the Paleozoic. If you want to look back onto the video where it's at, feel free to do so. And the Precambrian period marks the beginning of the Earth approximately 4.6 billion years ago. And the oldest rock fragment that they found on Earth actually contains a mineral zircon, which is 4.4 million years, which is found in Australia. And the very primitive form of life that they found are one-celled animals, bacteria, and jellyfish, as you can see here on this diagram. The next one that we're going to take a look at is the Paleozoic Era, or we also call that the early life. Now, in this era marks the formation of the supercontinent Pangaea, as you can see in this diagram in green. And they have found that life developed rapidly during this era, and marine plants and invertebrates are the ones that kind of like developed during this era, and as well as fish and ferns, amphibians. And at the end of the Paleozoic era, there was a mass extinction that happened during this time. And of course, when that mass extinction happened, the era is pretty much over. Now, the next era is your Mesozoic era. You also call that middle life. And this is when increased life forms starts developing, including your dinosaurs, your small mammals, birds. You also have some conifers and flowering plants, because last time the early life of plants are very simple. And of course, the rocks that are petrified in Arizona, there's like this forest that have petrified plants. This is deposited during this time. And lastly, at the end of the Mesozoic era, there's a mass extinction that ended this era. Let's now go to Cenozoic Era, which is the late life. So this is actually where we start appearing. And this is where we are at currently. And the development of large mammals were very prominent at this era, as well as human beings appearing. And there are some periods of ice ages which played in the role in formation of geological features that's visible in Earth today. Now, what about living organisms? Now, fossils of previous living organisms are used to further divide your Earth's geologic history. As you can see here in this diagram, you can see how the layers of rocks can reveal what are buried underneath that have died at a certain era. Okay, and as you can see here, from Paleozoic all the way up, you can see how these different fossils could actually help in identifying when these organisms appeared over time. Now, the life on Earth has changed over time or evolved quite a lot in 4.6 billion years. And like we mentioned earlier in the slide, we live in the Cenozoic era, which is further broken down into epochs. As you can see here, the different epochs, you have your Paleocene, Eocene, Oligocene, Miocene, Pliocene, Pleistocene, and the Holocene. Now, as you can see from the bottom up of this era, the current epoch that we have is the Holocene, which started 11,700 years. So, just a quick check. Which epoch do we live at this point in time? Now, during the 4.6 billion years, it has suffered 5 major mass extinction. It started at the end of the Ordovician period, 439 million years ago. Now, 60% of the marine invertebrates go extinct during this time. Now, there's another mass extinction in the late Devonian period. This is still under Paleozoic. And about 57% of marine invertebrates genera or kind went extinct. And then at the end of the Permian period, which is 245 million years ago, 53% of marine invertebrates went extinct as well. And the fifth major mass extinction happened in the end of Cretaceous. So the Cretaceous period is already in the Mesozoic era. That is the time where dinosaurs were, and 47% of marine invertebrate genera went extinct, including some of your known dinosaurs. Now, an extinction is usually the end of a group of organisms, usually a species. So, and then they're gone. Now, many of us are very curious about the extinction of dinosaurs. So the most recent extinction that we know of is the Cretaceous Tertiary extinction event. And this happened 65.5 million years ago. And this is because climate and geologic changes were very evident, which have thought to weaken the dinosaur. And another theory is that there was a meteor strike that probably was the final blow, causing the extinction of the dinosaurs. Now let's summarize what we learned about our geologic time scale. We know that our geologic history of the Earth specifically is arranged in 2 order or chronological order, and we have the different time stamps that could be in epoch, period, era, and eons. We also talked about the different life forms that formed way back in time all the way to the current one. And we also saw some of the different mass extinctions, particularly the extinctions of dinosaur and the reason behind it. Now, please make sure that you are able to explain how the geologic timescale works and describe the major events in Earth's geologic history. I hope you understand what geologic timescale means, and I will see you in class. Bye!